jealous sister slipped poison in my food for getting pregnant. First, parents excused it as a joke. My sister, Clara, has always been the golden child. Not in a traditional sense, where she was the sweetest or the smartest, but in a way where she could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I, on the other hand, was the shadow, the afterthought. It was always, "Oh, look at what Clara did," or "Clara needs your help," or "Don't upset Clara, she's very sensitive." This started as far back as I can remember. When we were little, if she broke one of my toys, it was just an accident, and I was being dramatic for crying. If I got a better grade on a test, she would get upset, and I would be told to downplay my success so she wouldn't feel bad. This favoritism was an unwritten rule in our household, a constant source of quiet resentment that I learned to bury deep down. But the real problem, the one that escalated everything, began in our late teens. Clara became obsessed with being the first to hit every major life milestone. First to graduate college, first to get a real job, first to get engaged, first to get married, and especially, first to have a baby. I honestly didn't care about a lot of these things, but she saw it as a competition, a race she absolutely had to win. I remember her getting engaged a month after I started seeing my now husband, Liam. She made a huge deal about it, saying she just knew she was going to get married before me, even though I had no plans to even get engaged yet. She would constantly ask me about our relationship timeline, and when I told her we were just taking things slow, she'd get this smug look on her face as if she had won some secret prize. The worst part was that our parents would encourage this behavior. They'd say things like, "Clara's on the fast track, she's going to be a homeowner before you know it," or, "Don't worry, honey, you'll catch up eventually." It made me feel like I was a permanent runner-up in a competition I didn't even know I was in. I always felt like my life was a footnote in the grand story of Clara's. I tried talking to my parents about it, but they'd just dismiss it. "That's just how sisters are," they'd say, or, "You two are so competitive." They never saw it for what it was, a one-sided, emotionally abusive power struggle fueled by their clear favoritism. I knew this was setting the stage for disaster, but I never could have imagined how far she would take it. I thought it was just petty jealousy, but it turns out it was something far more sinister and dangerous. The red flags were all there. I just didn't want to see them. I truly thought my sister loved me, in her own messed up way, but I was wrong. So wrong. The inciting incident happened when I got pregnant. My husband and I had been married for 2 years and we were so excited to start our family. We decided not to tell anyone at first, just to have a few weeks to ourselves to let the news sink in. But I was so excited I couldn't help but tell my mom and dad. I thought they would be thrilled, and they were, for about 10 seconds. My mom immediately said, "Oh, you need to tell Clara. She's been trying to get pregnant for months." The joy just evaporated. It was no longer my news, it was about Clara. I should have known right then that this was going to go horribly wrong. I told my sister the next day over the phone. I tried to be gentle, to frame it in a way that wouldn't set her off, but it didn't matter. Her initial reaction was completely silent, a tense, unsettling quiet on the other end of the line. Then she just said, "Oh, congratulations, I guess." And that was it. She didn't ask a single question about my pregnancy. Nothing about how I was feeling, if it was planned, or when the baby was due. She just shut down the conversation as quickly as she could. For the next few weeks, she became colder and colder. She'd ignore my texts, and when we were together at family dinners, she would barely look at me. It was like I had done something unforgivable, something to be ashamed of. My mom kept trying to play mediator, saying, "Clara's just a little sensitive right now," or "She's having a hard time, you know?" But it was more than sensitivity, it was open hostility. I started to notice small things. If I went to the fridge to get something, she'd suddenly get up and come into the kitchen. If I was talking to my parents, she'd find a way to interrupt or change the subject. It was all so subtle, so passive-aggressive, but the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I tried to reach out to her, to talk to her about how I was feeling, but she wouldn't have it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she'd say, all innocence and fake confusion. "I'm so happy for you." But the look in her eyes told a different story. I confided in my husband, Liam, and he was livid. He said we should just stop seeing them for a while, that their behavior was toxic and unhealthy for me and the baby. But I still held on to the hope that my sister would come around, that this was just a temporary phase of jealousy that would pass. I couldn't have been more wrong. The true escalation was yet to come. It was the calm before the storm, and I, in my naive hopefulness, had no idea what was brewing beneath the surface. The escalation reached a critical point at a family barbecue. My husband and I hosted it at our house, and we invited my parents and my sister, Clara. We thought a casual, low-pressure environment might help, but it only made things worse. Clara showed up with an almost manic energy, too cheerful to be believable. She was a whirlwind of fake compliments and forced laughter. She brought a big bowl of potato salad, something I've always loved. She insisted on serving it to me herself, piling my plate high. "You need to eat for two now," she said, her voice a little too high-pitched. It was so out of character that it made me uneasy. I thanked her and started eating, but after a few bites, I felt this strange, metallic taste. I thought maybe something was just off with the seasoning, but it lingered. I ate a few more bites just to be polite, and then I noticed my stomach started to cramp up, a sharp, twisting pain that came out of nowhere. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, feeling nauseous and dizzy. I was in there for about 10 minutes, feeling sicker by the minute. When I came out, my husband Liam looked concerned. "Are you okay? You look pale," he said. I told him I felt sick and my stomach was cramping. He immediately went into protective mode. He looked at my plate and then at the bowl of potato salad, which Clara was still hovering over. He'd always been suspicious of her, and now he was putting the pieces together. I didn't want to believe it, but the puzzle was starting to form a terrifying picture. As I stood there, feeling more and more unwell, my parents and Clara were laughing in the kitchen. I heard my mom say something to Clara in a hushed tone. "Did you really do it?" she whispered. And Clara, with a little giggle, said, "Of course. She deserves it for getting pregnant first." My heart stopped. I was frozen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like I was in a bad movie, but the cold, nauseous dread in my stomach was all too real. I felt a wave of anger so intense it almost made the pain in my stomach go away. My husband had heard it too. He walked over, his face like a thundercloud. He wasn't yelling, but his voice was hard as stone. "What did you just say?" he asked Clara. She went completely white. She tried to backtrack, to say it was just a joke, but my husband wasn't having it. "What did you put in her food?" he demanded. She looked from him to me, then to our parents, who were now looking incredibly nervous. That's when the whole facade crumbled. The confrontation was about to begin, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the family I had known was about to shatter into a million pieces. The confrontation that followed was a blur of righteous anger and outright denial. My husband, Liam, was a force of nature. "What did you do?" he repeated, his voice low and dangerous. Clara, pale and trembling, tried to deflect. "It was just a joke, Liam. Relax. It was a little something to make her feel bad for a few minutes," she stammered. My parents, in a move that I still can't comprehend, rushed to her defense. "It was just a prank," my mom said, a placating tone in her voice. She didn't mean any harm. I was standing there, the dizziness and nausea still swirling inside me, but now it was overshadowed by a gut-wrenching feeling of betrayal. "A joke?" I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. "You put something in my food while I'm pregnant? What did you put in it, Clara? Tell me." My sister looked like a cornered animal. She finally blurted out, "It was just some stuff to make you sick, okay? I just wanted you to feel a little bit of what I'm going through. It's not a big deal." My husband, meanwhile, had picked up the bowl of potato salad and was marching toward the kitchen sink. "We're taking this to a lab," he said. "We're going to find out exactly what's in it." That's when my parents completely lost it. My dad, who is usually so quiet, stepped in front of Liam. "Don't you dare! You're making a scene! This is a family matter, and you're overreacting," he bellowed. Overreacting? My sister had just admitted to putting something in my food, something to make me sick, while I was pregnant. My husband was a hero in that moment. He calmly put the bowl down and told them, "This is not a family matter. This is an assault. We are leaving, and you should probably think about what you've done." He then turned to me, put his arm around me, and led me out of the house. I was so dazed and hurt that I just let him. As we were walking out the door, my mom yelled after us, "You two are being so dramatic. Clara apologized. Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" My sister just stood there, tears streaming down her face, looking more pathetic than remorseful. It was a climax of years of bad behavior finally exploding. The mask had come off. It wasn't a family. It was a conspiracy. A conspiracy to protect Clara, no matter what. My husband took me straight to the emergency room. My symptoms had gotten worse, and I was starting to feel intense stomach pain and cramping. The doctors ran a series of tests, and while they couldn't confirm exactly what she had slipped me, they found traces of a common household laxative and a high dose of a vitamin supplement that can cause nausea and vomiting in large quantities. It wasn't a traditional poison, but it was absolutely designed to make me sick and scared. It could have been dangerous for the baby, and the doctor made that very clear. The whole experience was terrifying and humiliating. The emotional fallout was immediate and devastating. My parents started blowing up my phone with text messages, not to ask if I was okay, but to demand that I call them and apologize to Clara. Apologize. They said I had ruined the family barbecue and overreacted to a harmless prank. They claimed I was being cruel to Clara, who was just going through a hard time with her fertility. It was mind-boggling. My mom even sent a long, rambling text about how I was tearing the family apart and that my husband was a bad influence and that Clara and I needed to talk it out like sisters. They were so far gone in their denial that I couldn't even respond. My husband saw the texts and just shook his head. "Don't engage," he said. "They're not rational. They're enablers." And he was right. They weren't seeing their daughter as a malicious person who had potentially harmed her pregnant sister. They were seeing her as a victim of my so-called overreaction. Clara, for her part, sent one short, dismissive text that simply said, "I'm sorry you got sick. It was a bad joke. Can we move on?" The lack of remorse was a punch to the gut. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. The first major update is that we cut them off completely. After that last text, I told my husband I couldn't do it anymore. I blocked my sister's number and muted my parents. It was a difficult decision, but it felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The constant anxiety, the need to pretend everything was okay, the feeling of being in a never-ending competition, it all just disappeared. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just my sister's shadow. I was me. My husband was incredibly supportive. He made it clear that my well-being and the baby's safety were the only things that mattered. We started building a new life, one free from the constant drama and manipulation. We had a gender reveal with just a few close friends, something small and intimate. My parents and Clara, of course, found out through a mutual friend and started sending me angry texts about how they weren't included. My mom said, "How could you do this to us? Your father is so disappointed." But I just deleted the messages. I didn't feel any guilt, only a strange sense of peace. Clara's behavior, according to our family friend, escalated even further after that. She started posting cryptic messages on social media, things like, "Some people just can't handle a little bit of playful competition," and "Family is supposed to be there for you, even when you make a mistake." She was playing the victim, trying to get validation from a public audience. It was pathetic, but I was so far removed from it that it didn't even hurt anymore. My husband and I focused on preparing for the baby, and the entire process was filled with joy and excitement, not tension and competition. It was what a pregnancy should feel like. I had my own baby shower with my friends and my husband's family, all of whom were incredibly loving and supportive. They didn't even know the full extent of the family drama, but they knew something was wrong. And they were just happy for me, without any strings attached. The second update came 6 months later, when I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful baby girl. It was the most incredible moment of my life. My husband was by my side the whole time, and my joy was complete. The day after I gave birth, my mom and dad called. I had unblocked them for a minute, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they would be reasonable and want to meet their granddaughter. My mom's voice was tense. "We want to see the baby," she said, her voice sounding less like a question and more like a demand. I told her that she was welcome to come, but Clara was not. She immediately started with the excuses. "But Clara is family! She's the aunt! You can't just exclude her! She's been so upset!" My dad got on the phone and tried to reason with me. "Honey, you have to understand, we are a family. We need to be together. What kind of example are you setting for your daughter?" I held my little girl in my arms, and it was like I finally found my backbone. I told them that a family doesn't poison its members. I told them that a family doesn't enable bad behavior. I told them that the family they were so proud of had actively tried to hurt me and my baby. I said I was not putting myself or my daughter in a situation where she could be at risk. My mom started crying, saying, "You're punishing us for a mistake Clara made. You're being so unforgiving." I told them they were right. I was unforgiving. I was unforgiving for the years of emotional neglect, for the favoritism, and for excusing a dangerous and malicious act as a joke. I told them if they ever wanted to see me or their granddaughter again, they had to understand that what Clara did was not a mistake or a joke. It was a deliberate act of cruelty. I hung up the phone before they could respond, and the silence in the house was a sweet relief. The final update is a bittersweet one. My husband and I have completely cut off contact with my parents and my sister. They tried to show up at my house uninvited a few times, but we didn't open the door. They left gifts for the baby on the doorstep, but we donated them. It felt a little cold at first, but I knew it was the right decision. My mom finally sent me a long text, not an apology, but a final attempt to place the blame on me. She said I was cold-hearted and that I had chosen a man over my family. She said she hoped I would never have to deal with what Clara is going through. And then, a few months ago, I got a text from a friend of my mom's. She said that Clara had started a fertility treatment, and it wasn't going well. She was becoming more and more unhinged, more desperate. She had apparently started making my parents' lives a living hell, lashing out at them and blaming them for not being there for her. It was the ultimate irony. They had created this monster, and now it was turning on them. My mom's friend said they were exhausted and that they finally saw what I had been talking about for years. They were seeing her true colors, the same colors she had shown me, but it was too late. I didn't feel a sense of vindication, just a profound sadness for them and for the family that could have been. The family that they chose to sacrifice for the sake of their golden child. The resolution for me is not a grand climactic reunion or an apology from my sister. It's the quiet peace I've found. My life now is so full of love and joy, and it's completely free from the toxic drama that defined my youth. My husband is my rock, my biggest supporter. Our daughter is happy and thriving, and we're raising her in a home where her feelings are validated, where she is loved unconditionally, and where she doesn't have to compete for a single moment of attention. We've built our own family, a new one based on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine love. It's the family I always deserved. The vindication comes not from seeing my sister and parents suffer, but from seeing how far I've come. I stood up for myself. I protected my child. I broke the cycle of abuse that had been running in my family for years. I went from being a permanent runner-up to the champion of my own life. I learned that you don't have to forgive people just because they're family. You don't have to keep people in your life who actively cause you harm. The weight is gone, replaced by a quiet, unwavering strength. Now looking back, I see all the red flags I missed. It wasn't just the blatant favoritism, it was the way my parents would always make excuses for Clara's bad behavior, how they would brush off her tantrums and her jealousy as just her personality. It was how they would always tell me to be the bigger person, to let things go, to not rock the boat. They were teaching me to tolerate my own mistreatment. And I did for so long because I wanted their love, their approval. I wanted to be just as important to them as my sister was. But the truth is, I never would be. That's a painful lesson to learn, but it's an important one. The final piece of the puzzle, the one that truly changed my perspective, was understanding that their behavior was about them, not about me. It was their own dysfunction, their own inability to parent two children equally, and their own fear of conflict. My sister's cruelty and my parents' enabling were symptoms of a deeper problem within their own emotional landscape. It had nothing to do with my worth as a person. I was not the problem. I was just the unfortunate target of their misplaced affections. So here I am, telling this story to you, a community of people who get it. I've read so many stories on here, and now I'm finally sharing my own. It feels so liberating to put it all out there, to finally confess the full extent of the emotional abuse I endured. I'm not looking for judgment, but I'm also not going to shy away from it. I know some people will say I should have tried harder to reconcile, that family is everything, but I have to disagree. My family proved to me that they are not a safe place, that they would prioritize their own comfort and their golden child's feelings over my safety and the well-being of my unborn child. That is not a family. It's a codependent, emotionally stunted arrangement. My husband and my daughter are my family now. They are my people. And for the first time in my life, I feel truly seen, truly loved, and truly safe. I'm not a footnote in someone else's story anymore. I am the protagonist, and this is my happy ending.